Hello, and thanks so much for joining us for another episode of Mid-American Gardener. I'm your host, Tanisha Spain, and joining me today are panelists who are here to answer your questions and help get your garden off to a good start. So before we jump in with show and tells and answering your questions, let's have them introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about more about where you can find them in the garden. So Jen, we'll start with you.
Hi, I'm Jen Nelson, and you can find me online at groundedandgrowing.com. I am a general horticulturalist. I can cover just about anything, but my favorite things, if I had to pick, would be vegetable gardening, houseplants, and gardening with kids is one of my favorites as well. So hit me up with your questions.
Okay. All right. Marty?
Hello, my name is Marty Alanya, and I'm a retired landscaper. I focus more on perennials and shrubs and trees for the private garden, as I landscape privately for people. I had a couple commercial jobs, but really it's about the same. You dig a hole, you water it. I prefer that to, I've done houseplants, I do vegetable gardening, but you don't want to ask me. Jen is like, that's who you should, wait, I'm going backwards.
Yep.
That's who you should. Yeah. That's who you should.
Okay. All right. And again, we've got another new face. It's been a great month for new panelists. Chris Enroth is joining us. So Chris, tell us a little bit about you, your specialty, and where we can find you outside.
Well, Tanisha, I am so excited to be on Mid-America Gardener. I've watched the show for many years, and hey, now here I am. So kids, you can do it too. But I'm a horticulture educator with University of Illinois Extension, and I am based in Macomb, Illinois, and I serve 4 counties. So McDonough, Warren, Henderson, and Knox counties. And I would say my specialty would be landscaping for the most part. But, at Extension, we get asked all kinds of questions. And so I'm not really afraid to tackle anything. If you want to find me online, me and my colleagues out here in West Central Illinois, we have the Good Growing blog and podcast. So you can find us just by searching for Good Growing, and you can listen or read all about it.
Awesome. So we've got yours, we've got Grounded and Growing, and then Marty's retired and living on the beach. So
Yeah.
nice cross section.
Yeah, that was the Garden of Eden.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay. Show and tells are always the first go round. So Jen, you've got a couple things to show us. What's your first one?
Well, I went to the nursery looking for some more potting soil, and I came home with plants, which happens, right?
It happens.
So, what I found,
That can't be true.
a jade called Crashula spiralis, black curl, and I don't know if I can get it in there. The way it grows, the way the leaves come out, if you look at it from up above, it's in a spiral. And it's so different from other jades. This is Crashula ovata, which is kind of the jade that everyone thinks of when they hear jade plant. But there's lots of different shapes and sizes of jade. And I just found that in a random shelf of assorted succulents. And so if you look close, you may find something across your cart.
When I looked at it the first time yesterday, I immediately thought it was hen and chicks from far away, because it kind of has that same sort of look to it. Now, will you keep that inside or will you move it outside?
I'll keep it inside and put it with the other precious babies that are lining the walls of my kitchen. So I'll sneak it in. No one will notice, right?
Right. Now, the $1 million question is, did you get potting soil?
I did.
Okay. Just making sure. Okay, so Marty, we're going to move to you. Your show and tell sort of goes with the question that we've got, so I'll read that. It is number 20. Julia writes in and says, I have an overgrown pot of multiple aloe plants. How do I divide them, and what soil do I use? So, Julia, it is your lucky day because Marty's got one too. So, take it away, Marty.
Okay. I didn't loosen this, but it's been in here for a while. I'm just gonna.
I wish I could be there to help you. You look like you could use an
handle it
assistant.
out of there. I kind of do. Come on, you can do it.
Oh my gosh, Marty.
Ray Daniels. I should have loosened it. I had no idea it was so attached to its home.
Oh my gosh. Should we join you
you
back
can
in
see.
progress?
This is, yeah, why don't you go to
All right, we're gonna move to Chris, and we're gonna come back to you. So maybe, all right, Chris, we're gonna go ahead and move to your show and tell.
That's fine.
Okay, so you brought one, and it's got photos accompanying it. So why don't you go ahead and walk us through yours?
Certainly. And Marty, I am mailing you a hammer and chainsaw as we speak to get that out.
Do you have one? That'd be swell.
So for my show and tell today, what I have brought is actually considered a lawn weed. And so pictured here is what's called nimblewill. Now, nimblewill, in my yard, if it's green, I can mow it. Hey, I don't really care. But nimblewill is one of those things that really affects kind of that texture with the lawn. You can see here, we have it's in the spring. This picture was just taken last week. The lawn's greening up, the cool season grasses, but because nimblewill is a warm season grass, this one is actually stained brown and straw brown color, and it will green up. It's starting to green up right now. There's just a closer up look to it. It has kind of like sort of a broom type top to it, kind of a brushy top. And there you can really see it there, just that nice patch of nimblewill. And again, if this doesn't bother you, that's okay. Nimblewill is actually a native North American grass. And so, hey, what's not to love about that? And there are some ecological benefits to this, but it is also easy to control for the most part. So, I mean, here's my sample right here. I just pulled it out of the ground. It comes out of the ground pretty easy, roots and all. So it is easy to pull out of the ground right now, but some folks, once you do that, you have to fill that void with something, or another weed will just come back. So seed, put down some sod. There are some chemical controls that you can apply to these. And actually, most folks, they might just go with, say, a straight up glyphosate, which is broad spectrum. Once again, once you apply that, overseed or resod that patch. But there is a new post-emergent type herbicide you can apply to the lawn, which you can spray on these things while it's green and actively growing. And that active ingredient is called mesotrione. Most common product name, I think, is Tenacity. It's an expensive product and you don't need much of it. So it might just make more sense to hire someone to come out and spray it for you if you really do want to control it. But otherwise, again, if it's green, you can mow it. It's not that big of a deal. It's still grass.
Still grass, but you've got that certain sect of people who want the perfect manicured look. So great information for them. I am not those people, but great information for them. Okay, so Marty, we've got you back. You've got it divided. Now let's get you unmuted and back into the conversation, because we have to hear how that wrestling match ended just a few minutes ago.
Right. I didn't mute me in the first going off. I don't know how that happened. Anyway, yeah. Okay. There's a lot of roots in this pot. You may recognize the pot just a few moments ago. So the biggest growth fallow tore off, cracked off, or I cut them off. So this is actually ready to go ahead and grow again. I really didn't, honest to God, I thought it'd pull right out of there. I thought I'd have a great root mass on it. I don't know if you can hear. Let me move my camera a little bit, and I have a little jungle here in front of me. And I have another pot. Now, I like this. It's kind of a southwestern feel. Aloe's kind of a succulent. So I'll just run through a little bit of planting. You can plant any of these. Some of them have a little bit of root on them. You can see there. Okay. A little bit like that. You can plant those. Would do this. I would clean these. If this aloe had come out of the pot in one piece, like I figured it would, but it didn't. Live television, get what you pay for on public TV. This is what happens. So you can take a knife and you can just saw down through that soil ball, and you can just cut it in sections, and then you shake off the old soil, and you can see what you have. And this is what you're going to wind up with. Okay. So I can repot this all the way down to little guys like this. Those have roots on them. I don't know if you can see those roots are not very well. These little dudes. Take off any branches that are broken. If you burn yourself, smear it on there. It works really great. Okay. Now have this little pot. I'm going to scooch everybody over. I like to use coffee filters in the bottom of my pots. Do a couple of layers. I got 2 here, but for a bigger pot with a great big, like especially something going outside on your deck, cover the hole with coffee filters and make sure the soil's on it really nicely. And then it won't leak out onto your deck. You know, you want to cut out a pot. Same thing works in the house. So I got a bowl of potting soil here. I've got my coffee filter in there. And with aloe, you know, you fill the whole thing, okay? And then you take your little guy or little guys and you put them in there. Now, I'm not going to do one in a pot like this. That's not enough. This pot is too big for one little guy like this. So I'd have this guy and this little girl here and this little fellow, and maybe, you know, I'd probably put 3 or 4 this size in a pot like that, maybe even 5. And they're all about, I don't know, 7 inches long, 8 at the most. And then you have a nice little full pot, because when you repot things, they can't go into a, you know, like, oh, they'll have a room. They will not like that. They need, house plants do better with tight shoes. Container plants do better with tight shoes. So if you repot, go up 1 pot size, and then it'll fit in there really nicely. It won't get overwhelmed when you water it because there won't be too much water in the soil ball.
All right, thanks, Marty. And now we're going to go back to Jen for another show and tell. Jen, what do you got?
Okay, I brought another succulent to show, and I brought the more commonly seen one and then a more unusual one I found that jumped into my cart. So this is one that is more commonly seen. It's called, the common name is string of pearls, and it kind of looks like a bunch of green peas on a stem, and it looks really nice when it's hanging down. I will tell you, though, it's not the easiest succulent. Even though succulents have a reputation of being super easy, I've killed this one at least half a dozen times, but this one's doing really well, so I hope I didn't jinx it. So there's been all sorts of other ones coming out in stores that following the succulent craze, and I spotted this one the other day, and it's called string of watermelons, and it looks like the string of pearls, but a lot bigger and a lot more oval. They have kind of a stripe on it, supposedly, if you get them in good light. We're going to see if I can kill this one, but so far so good. I want to point out that I've got it just in a regular plastic nursery pot, and I found this pot that I thought was so pretty, and it has no drainage hole. You absolutely need to have drainage holes, even if the pot's pretty, even if you swear on a stack of Bibles that you're not going to overwater it, you will eventually.
You will.
So tuck that drained pot inside, and then after you water, make sure you dump this out so it's not sitting in water, especially succulents, and especially this particular group of succulents will die very quickly if they're too wet.
Yes, they are very fickle. I haven't gotten brave enough to get one yet because I know I will kill it immediately. So I'm going to wait and mature a little bit more, right, into my plant parenthood.
Sure. And I've only bought them small, because you can see these great big beautiful planters of them that are, you know, $30, $40, $50 or more. And there is no way. I'm going to just get my training wheels and get my little
bingo
3-inch, 4-inch pot and go
bingo. Same here. All right, Chris, we're going to you with a bug ID question. This is number 21. This is from Susan Chapman, and she writes in, I want to follow up with you folks on what this bug is and what I should do about it to protect my flowers, bees, butterflies, and hummingbirds. I know this bug is not a Japanese beetle, and I don't wish to use the powder 8. I've attached a couple of pictures to show what they look like. So she did send in a couple if we could show that. But what are your thoughts here on these flowers? You know, as our coneflowers are starting to come up, and she wants to protect them this growing season. So what are your thoughts?
So just looking at that photograph there, the color is a little bit washed out, but I believe that is some type of a green type beetle, sort of based on what I'm seeing there in our location in the Midwest. And I contacted a colleague, Ken Johnson, and he thinks, this is a guess, but we're sort of thinking this is a northern corn rootworm. So this is pretty common when you live in my neck of the woods, West Central Illinois. And then depending where this caller was at, if they're next to a cornfield, yeah, they kind of show up at late part of the season. They can be everywhere, and they can feast on, say, the coneflower petals. That's what they like to eat. In terms of control, there's not much you can do for the northern corn rootworm. Now, the picture that we just saw right there, I think that's something different. It looks a little bit more like a fungal issue, something called botrytis blight. You can use registered fungicides. So like, let's see, Captain, copper sulfate, maybe potassium bicarbonate are recommendations for like a fungicide spray when you start maybe see some of that coloration show up on that flower head there. But really the key thing for most gardens is going to be sanitation. So making sure that debris is taken out of the ground. Whenever you see that type of effect happening onto the flower head, those dark spots occurring on the cone, and just get rid of them, put them in the trash can, don't even compost them, and then clean up the garden in the fall.
Gotcha. Okay. Get them out of the mix completely.
Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Marty, we're going to you. Number 16. This is about birds in the corn. This is from Matthew. What is a good way to keep birds from eating my corn plants this summer? And you have a really unique idea that I liked about something we've all got sitting around the house. So,
yeah, it seems to work pretty well. Birds don't like shiny stuff, and owls, sometimes like fake owls. If you have real owls, well, good. But fake owls are fine, but you have to keep moving them because the birds get used to them and they realize that they're just a statue. Or the same way with like scarecrows, things like that. But if you have old CDs or DVDs, they're very shiny, and you can string them on a string between some pegs. I mean, this is as simple as like, a piece of bamboo, 2 feet long, stick it in the ground every 4 feet, put a piece of twine on, string your CDs on there and tie around and they will move and dangle, and they're shiny and iridescent, and the birds are worried about them. They're not sure what they are. And then you only have to do that until the corn gets, a little bit more. When it's real tiny, they'll pull them out. But once they get a foot tall or something, they'll be fine.
Just have to get past that phase when they're small.
Yeah, you got to get past it. Yep, sure do.
All right, Jen, we're going
and
to
here's
you.
The aloe.
The finished product.
Yeah. Here's the aloe in the pot. I've got about 5 little pieces in there. You arrange them around the edge, and then I poured the dirt in the middle, put the rest of my potting soil right down the middle. And then I kind of shook them to get them in there. They're very top heavy. Just water it good, it'll be fine.
And they'll take right
They're very
off.
resilient.
Awesome. And it's a good plant dish to have around the house for a host of different reasons. So thank you.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
They're great.
Let's see. Number 31, ammonia in the garden. This is from Jubal. He writes, my name is Jubal Underwood, a second generation viewer. So thank you very much. Wants to know, let's see here. I'm going to skip through some of this. Would it be practical to use common household ammonia as a nitrogen source, diluted perhaps, and applied directly to the soil? Similar to agricultural applications of anhydrous ammonia, the main purpose would be a sustainable source of nitrogen rather than store-bought fertilizer, in addition to garden compost. So, first of all, he is way more advanced than your average, well, I can't say you guys because you're the pros, but he's put some thought into this. So, what's your thought here? What's your answer?
Well, my thought on it is it's possible, but it's probably not a good idea. Even the rate that he's suggesting is too concentrated. I was looking up to directly spray it on your yard or on your plants. The recommendation is 1/2 ounce to a gallon, so 10-to-1 is still too strong. I wouldn't recommend it though, because there's no time release factor in there. You're just giving it a big push of nitrogen, and that's not necessarily good for the plants. I can also say from experience with a client back when I was with Extension, I had a client that very reluctantly admitted to me when we were looking at his tree and trying to figure out what was wrong with his tree, that appeared to have fire blight. And if those of you watching have heard us talk about fire blight before, it looks like a a crook. The new growth kind of curves over and it's dead. And we thought he had fire blight, but he was slowly giving us information. And one of the things he admitted was that he had poured straight ammonia on his tree. And that was why the plant clinic could never find evidence of fire blight. And they admit, yeah, it looks like fire blight, but you know, it kind of looks like chemical burn too. So that, yeah, I hope that, and I commend the viewer for asking us before he went ahead with it, because it's one of those things that, oh, it's natural, it must be somehow better, but you can do a whole lot of to your yard just with the stuff in your kitchen. So
either one of you guys want to weigh in on that? I saw you both very enthusiastically agreeing with Jen. So anything to add there for either of you?
Well, I was thinking, you know, black nightshade's natural too, but I wouldn't cultivate it. You know, eat those pretty purple berries, you know. Yeah, there's a lot of, well, all of our products are natural at one point, but yeah.
All right. Chris, anything from you?
I would completely agree. You know, I have had clients call the extension office that have inadvertently set chemical fires on their lawns because they mixed up the wrong chemicals from underneath their kitchen sink. So please only use labeled products on your landscape that are meant to be used on your landscapes. I hate hearing when people say they dump bleach on the ground or that they're putting ammonia all over the place. Just go to the garden center, buy that. You know, he's talking about sustainability. I mean, really the sustainable thing, if he's looking at a nitrogen source, is organic matter. As that decomposes, it releases that nitrogen back into the soil. That's all your plants are going to need.
Yeah. Great information. Thank you, guys. And coming off of this cold snap, Marty, we'll go to you for this one. Coming off of those few nights where the temperatures dipped, we had a lot of people on Facebook, on Instagram, and in our email asking, what do I do if I've got damage to my foliage? One particular question came in from, let's find it. This is Christopher Baxter, writes in and says, following the cold snap, if the ends of my hostas were damaged, should I trim them off? Also, well, he says bulbs, but that's okay. Also, can I transplant them? So twofold. What do you do if there was damage? And then is it okay to transplant now?
Transplant now. I didn't kind of outside of town, so I didn't have a lot of hosta poking through, but some did, and they got a little nipped. You can trim that off if you want to, but what I do is leave them. I just leave them. When hosta grow, they send up a leaf, and then another leaf comes inside from the middle of the crown, and they keep sending out leaves like that from the center. Okay. And the one that comes early will still grow, but the tip might be bad. So once you get another leaf or two, you can trim the old one off if you want to. They're hardy to Canada, so I'm not worried about, you know, they're hard to kill. You know, I mean, you don't have to worry, you know, so if you see where they're coming up and you want to divide, this is a perfect time of year to divide them before things are completely unfold, because they don't require as much. It's the plant shock, the transplant shock is less because the leaves aren't out yet. So just this, if you want a piece of a clump there, take a sharp spade, slice down in there, straight down, get part of the root, take it, plant it, water well. You were talking about cultural practices at the beginning of the show, Tanisha, and please mulch when you plant something. It's a habit I'm trying to cultivate. And mulching is so beneficial to your plant material. It just is so much better than just the bare ground. I mean, unless you're planting sedum, but even then, I mean, it just helps them a lot.
Okay.
So,
all right.
Moisture retention, you know.
Speaking of best practices, we've got about 2 minutes left. So Jen, what tips do you have for folks as we're moving outside to get things in the ground and ready to go? What's a best practice tip from you?
Oh, well, I can say from experience, as when I was a new homeowner and had a completely empty yard, I planted way too much in the space. So pay attention to what mature sizes actually look like. Like get a tape measure out, and as much as you want to, it does help to visualize that and anticipate that. And if you really have to fill in that empty space because your brain won't let you, fill in with some annuals in between those perennials. Don't cram them all in, because I have spent a lot of time spreading them apart now. So
all right, 30 seconds. Chris, what about you? Best practices.
Oh, you got to learn how to clean those tools off every time after you're done with them. Not only does it help your tools, but now with the new invasive jumping worm that is spreading around the state, it could possibly save your garden from that new invasive creature that we have popping up around the state.
Okay,
Clean
so
those tools.
mulch, don't overcrowd, and clean your tools. And on that note, we're out of time. So thank you, all of you, for helping out. Chris, welcome to the Crazy Train. We hope to have you on more shows. And thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions for our pros, please send them in to yourgarden@gmail.com, or you can look us up on Facebook and Instagram, and we'll see you next time. Good night.